Sign it now or leave the dress and walk out of this house before lunch, my future mother-in-law, Lillian Vale said, while her friends were still passing crystal plates of fruit and smoked salmon around the table like we were in the middle of something civilized. No one laughed. No one looked shocked. That was the first thing I understood. This was not a sudden insult. It was a room they had built for me. I was sitting at a long white table in the east garden room of the Vale estate, wearing the silk robe from my bridal suite, because the seamstress was still steaming my gown upstairs. Around me sat my future sister-in-law, Audrey, 2 godmothers from the family church, the wedding planner, the family lawyer, the notary, and 3 women who had spent the last month telling me how lucky I was to be marrying into a family with a name like Vale. Carter sat 3 seats down from me, jacket off, tie loosened, looking tired in that handsome, polished way men like him always do when they want their silence to pass for dignity. Lillian slid the prenuptial agreement across the table and rested one pale hand on it like she was blessing me. A woman entering this family should not be afraid of clarity, she said. If you are here for the right reasons, Camille, then you sign, and we all move forward with grace. Audrey smiled into her water glass. Any decent woman would have signed it already, she said. I looked at Carter. He gave me the same soft, sad expression he had used for weeks any time his mother said something sharp enough to draw blood. Do not make this uglier than it needs to be, he said quietly. It is just paperwork. Just paperwork. That was funny coming from the man whose family office had spent the past 10 days trying to pry open a trust they had no legal business touching. My name is Camille Rowan. I was 30, and I worked in financial review for a tax litigation group in Richmond. I spent my life tracing money through shell companies, trust distributions, debt filings, and friendly language people used when they wanted theft to sound like planning. So when I opened that prenuptial agreement and saw a clause requiring me to waive independent review over any separate income used to support marital obligations, I did not think protection. I thought extraction. By page 4, I found a reference to cooperative access with the Vale family office. By page 6, there was a line about aligning future distributions with household solvency needs. By page 8, there was a notation tied to my trust counsel that should never have been in their draft at all, unless someone in that family had already gone hunting through places they were not invited. Then I looked up and saw the room for what it really was. Not a wedding luncheon. A credit meeting in pearls. My Aunt Imogene left me a trust when she died 2 years earlier. She had no children, no patience for weak men, and a gift for seeing through polished predators before they even finished introducing themselves. The trust paid me quarterly enough to make my life easy, and it held voting rights in a family logistics company she had quietly helped build from the inside. The structure was tight. Private trustee. Independent review. Distribution controls. Protective language that made sure no husband, no in-law, and no smiling little aristocrat with a vintage cufflink collection could slide his hand into it just because he put a ring on my finger. Until Carter proposed, almost no one outside my lawyers and accountant knew how much was in it. Then suddenly Lillian started asking sweet little questions over dinner. Was the trust liquid? Were distributions fixed? Could family advisors ever help optimize it? Did I plan to keep my old counsel after the wedding? Or would I let the Vale office simplify things for me? Simplify. That is a word rich families use when they want access. At first I told myself it was nerves. Adjustment. The normal territorial ugliness that comes out around weddings and money. Then 3 days before the ceremony, the administrative assistant at my trust office called to say someone from the Vale family office had requested historical payout schedules and structural summaries for marital planning review. I never authorized that. That was when my instincts started to itch. This lunch just confirmed I had been right. I closed the document slowly and said, "Of course I will sign, once the disclosure is reciprocal." For the first time since I sat down, the room shifted. Lillian did not like being answered without fear. "Reciprocal," she repeated. "Yes," I said. "If your agreement reaches into protected trust distributions and future income treatment, then I will need full disclosure of liquidity debt obligations, short-term lending exposure, and any prior communications with third parties that referenced my trust or any post-marriage access to it." One of the godmothers stopped chewing. Audrey laughed softly. "This is exactly what Carter meant," she said. "You make everything sound like a federal investigation." Carter leaned forward. "Camille, please, we are trying to avoid drama." "No," I said. "You are trying to avoid disclosure." Lillian looked at me for a long moment. Then, because she was too proud to admit that anything about her family needed to stay hidden from a bride she considered socially beneath them, she smiled. "Very well," she said. "If this is what helps you feel secure, we can do this properly." Properly. The word landed like perfume over rot. I nodded, folded the agreement shut, and passed it back across the table. "Good," I said. "Then let us do it properly." That should have felt like a small victory. It did not. It felt like the click of a trapdoor opening somewhere under polished floors. When lunch ended, Audrey brushed past me in the hall and murmured, "You are trying very hard to sound important today." I smiled. "No," I said. I am trying very hard to sound expensive. She did not like that. Good. Upstairs I found my bridal suite half stripped. My flowers had been moved. My gown was gone. My shoes were gone. The robe hanging over the armchair was not mine. A maid I had never seen before told me Mrs. Vale wanted me moved to the blue guest room for the rest of the afternoon because the main suite needed to be prepared for family photographs. Prepared. It is always amazing how quickly women like Lillian start treating you like staff the second they think the wedding is too close for you to run. I let them move me. That is the part people never understand about this kind of revenge. You do not win by fighting every insult. Sometimes you win by stepping backward exactly as far as your enemy wants, so she cannot feel the edge of the cliff she is walking toward. Carter came to the blue room around 5. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it. Handsome, tired, controlled everything about him, arranged to make me feel unreasonable for seeing what was sitting right in front of me. You embarrassed my mother, he said. No, I said. Your mother embarrassed herself. He exhaled through his nose. She is scared. That almost made me laugh. Of me. Of what people think. Of what happens if this family looks careless around money right before a public marriage. We are trying to protect everyone, Camille. Everyone. That was a beautiful lie. If you were protecting everyone, I said, my trust office would not have your family office's fingerprints all over it. His face changed. Only a little. But enough. You are overreacting, he said. It was a routine inquiry. No, I said. A routine inquiry does not show up inside a prenup draft as a distribution alignment clause. He ran one hand through his hair. I need you to trust me. Need. Not want. Need. That word cut cleaner than any insult Lillian had thrown at lunch. I looked at the man I had been ready to marry, and understood all at once that he did not need my trust. He needed my income stream. The rest of me was ceremony. What is the bank's exposure, Carter? I asked. He went still. There it was. Not denial. Not confusion. Recognition. I said it again. How short are you? His voice came back flat. You do not know what you are talking about. I held his gaze. Then tell me why your mother's lunch lawyer is drafting around household solvency before I am even married. He said nothing. That silence was the end of him. Not as a fiancé. He was already dying there. As a possibility. As a person I still had to protect from what I knew how to do. He left 10 minutes later without fixing a single thing. The moment the door shut, I called Judith Mercer. Judith had served as outside counsel for my aunt Trust for 11 years. She was in her 60s, exact, merciless, and professionally incapable of being charmed by family myth. She listened while I gave her the facts. Lillian forced a prenup at lunch. They included trust language. They asked your office for distribution records. Carter reacted when I mentioned liquidity. I need to know how much trouble they are in. She called back just after midnight. A lot, she said. The Vale family private bank line is under review. A land acquisition bled cash, a hospitality expansion went long, and they are sitting on a short-term liquidity hole they expected to cover with bridge support and future household income representation. Future household income representation. My throat went dry. Me. Yes, Judith said. Not you as a person. You as a stream. That sentence sits in my memory like broken glass. You as a stream. Not a bride. Not a wife. Not a partner. A stream. Then Judith gave me the rest. Carter sent a note to their private banker last week, saying that after marriage my distribution posture would be harmonized under a more coordinated family structure. Lillian Family Office requested confirmation of trustee review protocols. And the bank flagged your trust as part of their informal comfort picture for post-marriage household support. They had already started selling a version of my future that did not belong to them. I stood by the window and looked down at the dark lawns of the Vale estate where workers were still carrying rented lanterns toward the ceremony lawn. Somewhere out there a quartet was rehearsing for the next day. Somewhere in the West Wing, Lillian was probably sleeping peacefully, confident she could still wrap this whole thing in silk by noon. I asked Judith what I needed. She said, make them sign solvency certifications. Make them disclaim reliance on your trust. Make Carter sign his own name under every relevant representation. Then let them keep moving. So that is what I did. By breakfast, my revised documents were in their inbox. A mutual financial disclosure addendum. A liquidity certification. A third-party non-reliance statement. A direct acknowledgement that no communications with lenders, advisors, or banks had been based on my trust, my future distributions, or any expectation of post-marriage control over them. I kept the tone gracious, cooperative, even warm. If you accuse people like the Vales too early, they become cautious. If you sound like a bride trying to be responsible, they keep smiling while they sign their own collapse. Lillian sent back the first pages by noon. Signed. Graham signed too. Then Carter. That one almost impressed me. He had enough arrogance left to believe his own name could save him. The rest of the day they punished me socially. My gown stayed missing. Audrey made sure I missed family photographs. Two of the bridesmaids stopped speaking to me above a whisper because Audrey had already told them I was having one of my episodes about money. Lillian informed the caterer that I should eat upstairs because I seemed overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That was her favorite word for women she was trying to shrink. I let them shrink me. By evening, Judith had the rest. Bank correspondence. Timing notes. Confirmation that the Vales had already leaned on my trust as future comfort in a private review meeting. Nothing criminal. Something worse. Desperate. The final signing was scheduled for 10 the next morning, 4 hours before the ceremony. They wanted it clean. Quiet. Witnessed. Official. Of course they did. When I walked into the library, every seat was filled. Lillian, Graham, Carter, Audrey, the family lawyer, the notary, their wealth advisor, and 2 women from the church standing in as moral furniture for the occasion. I wore the silk robe they had left in my room, no jewelry except the engagement ring, hair half-pinned, face bare. I wanted them to see exactly what they expected. A tired bride. Isolated. Managed. Close enough to the ceremony that she would swallow anything to avoid disgrace. Lillian looked almost tender. I am glad we are being sensible, she said. That nearly made me admire her. I sat down, flipped to the last page, picked up the pen, and let the room breathe in relief. Then I said, I will sign after one correction. Carter's shoulders loosened. Audrey smiled. Lillian nodded with that same false kindness. Of course, dear. What correction? I turned toward the door just as it opened. Judith Mercer stepped in, carrying a black leather file case, and the kind of calm that strips pretense out of expensive rooms. Lillian's face changed instantly. This is private family business, she said. No, Judith replied. This is trust interference and financial misrepresentation. Those are different things. She laid the first document on the table. Liquidity deficiency summary for Vale Holdings. Second document. Communication from Carter Vale to Private Banking Council, referring to future harmonization of Camille Rowan, trust distributions after marriage. Third. Written request from the Vale family office seeking trust payout protocols and review timing before authorized marital execution. Fourth. The signed non-reliant statement they had returned to me less than 24 hours earlier. And fifth, my favorite. A trustee advisory memo confirming that any coercive effort to alter the protective structure of my trust before or immediately after marriage would trigger automatic independent control and freeze elective distributions. No one moved. The room did not even feel rich anymore, just airless. Judith looked at Carter. You represented future access to income you did not control. Then, she looked at Lillian. You drafted around protected distributions, while simultaneously signing a certification that no lender or advisor had relied on them. Then she looked at the wealth advisor who had suddenly become fascinated by the grain in the table. And you allowed your client to proceed toward execution after seeking comfort from trust income that never belonged inside this negotiation at all. Lillian's voice sharpened. This is offensive. No, I said. Offensive was lunch yesterday. This is accounting. Carter looked at me like he had only just understood what had happened. You planned this. I shook my head. No. You did. I just read what you wrote. Judith opened the trust memorandum and read the key paragraph aloud. If any future spouse, future spouses, family, or affiliated advisor attempts to induce pressure or structure marital agreements in a way that weakens independent oversight or redirects protected distributions toward household obligations, under coercive conditions, the trustee shall immediately suspend elective access and place the trust under independent protective administration. Then she closed the file and said, the trigger has been met. Audrey spoke for the first time in almost a full minute. That is absurd. Judith did not even look at her. It is active. Now the room finally changed. Not with shouting. Not at first. With understanding. The notary capped her pen. The family lawyer started turning pages too fast. The church women looked down at their hands. The wealth advisor leaned back like distance might save him from proximity to the paperwork. And Carter, beautiful, polished, careful, Carter turned toward me with real fear on his face for the first time since I had known him. Camille, he said, let us talk privately. I smiled. No. He stepped closer anyway. I did not know she would push it this far. That was the sentence he chose. Not I am sorry. Not I should have stopped this. Not I betrayed you. He only regretted losing control of the method. I looked at him and said the truest thing I said all week. You did not need a wife, Carter. You needed a revenue stream and a wedding dress. The sound that came out of Audrey then was small and shocked and ugly. Lillian stood up so fast her chair caught the carpet. You ungrateful little opportunist, she hissed. We opened this family to you. No, I said. You opened my trust file and called it hospitality. That ended whatever illusion remained. The bank's representative came on speaker at 11, right on schedule, asking to confirm that all marriage-related financial comfort items had been regularized for the family structure review. Judith answered before anyone else could. There will be no trust harmonization, no distribution access, and no post-marriage support from Camille Rowan. Any prior informal comfort based on her trust was unauthorized. There was a pause. Then the voice on speaker changed. Understood. That was all. But in rooms like that, 2 syllables can cost millions. Lillian sat down again very slowly. The family lawyer whispered something about reevaluation. The wealth advisor would not look up. Audrey looked suddenly young and mean and foolish all at once. Carter stood in the center of the library with the exact posture of a man who had spent his whole life assuming damage could be negotiated away if he stayed handsome enough. It could not. I took off my engagement ring and placed it on the unsigned prenup. Keep your name, I said. I am keeping the thing you tried to bleed. Then I stood up and walked out. No one stopped me. That is the part I remember most. Not the victory. The silence. Because silence means people are finally hearing the truth over the performance. The ceremony never happened. Officially, the wedding was postponed due to private family concerns. Unofficially, by sundown, every florist, caterer, planner, driver, and churchwoman within 40 miles knew the Vales had tried to marry a trust before they married a bride. In families like theirs, that is worse than scandal. It is embarrassment with witnesses. I went home that afternoon, not to the hotel they had booked for the honeymoon, not to a friend's apartment. Home. The small brick house my aunt bought before I was born, the one place in my life no one had ever mistaken for decorative. The trustee had already called. Protective administration was active. No one named Vale would ever come near the structure again. They had not loosened it. They had tightened it against themselves forever. Carter texted just after dark. Please let me explain. I deleted it. Lillian emailed once. You have damaged this family beyond repair. That one I kept. Not because it hurt, because it told the truth better than anything else she said that week. I did damage the family they were trying to be. The one that could smile in daylight while feeding itself in private on anyone weaker, poorer, or more polite than they were. What I did not damage was anything worth grieving. Over the next month, the Vale family quietly sold a piece of land they had been pretending they would never part with. Their bank review tightened. Their hospitality expansion stalled. Carter disappeared from society pages for a while, which in his world was almost a medical event. Audrey posted 3 photographs about healing and family grace before someone finally told her to stop. Lillian sent one last message through a mutual acquaintance, saying she hoped in time I would regret choosing pride over belonging. I never answered, because pride was never the issue. Belonging was. She wanted me to belong to their shortage, their image, their need, their whole. I did not. That was the whole point. People always think stories like this are about revenge. Sometimes they are. But sometimes they are about refusing conversion. Refusing to let your life become fuel for a machine that was built long before you arrived and would have kept eating after you were gone. At lunch that first day, Lillian thought she was testing whether I came to the Vale family for money. What she never understood was that I had already seen the truth. They were the ones trying to live on mine. And when I set the ring down and walked out of that library, I did not feel abandoned, disgraced, or ruined. I felt accurate. That was enough.